Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for having me to have this talk on managing comorbidities in adolescents with perinatally acquired HIV. Okay, I have nothing to disclose. So with the global accessibility and scale of effective antiretroviral treatment, this transforms HIV from a progressive life-threatening disease to a chronic lifelong infection. And right now, adolescents with perinatally acquired HIV are growing and surviving to adulthood. And the paradigm of HIV morbidity and mortality has shifted to a long-term comorbidities that are associated with HIV infection and its treatment. And that caused the challenge in this population as well, because HIV-associated comorbidities in this population usually unrecognized due to failure to anticipate and screen. And that can increase the morbidity and mortality and also worsening their quality of life. This shows you a matched cohort study from US adults age equals or greater than 21 years. And you can see that, and you can see from, is it up here there? No, I have to point there. Okay, that's it. And so you can see that the overall life expectancy among those living with HIV increased over time, especially during the ART era. So the gaps between the life expectancy between those living with HIV and without HIV narrowing down over the time. But that pattern not happen for the expected years of major chronic comorbidities, the lower graph. You can see that the risk is also persists over time, and the gaps between those living with HIV compared to those without HIV is still stable. And this is the pathogenesis of HIV-associated comorbidities. You can see that right now HIV is a chronic illness, so it can cause the oxidative stress, that an abnormal production of reactive oxygen species that can cause the endothelial dysfunction, tissue damage, as well as immune dysfunction and persistent inflammation that can cause HIV-associated comorbidities. Also, long-term exposure to ART that have toxicity also can cause the HIV-associated comorbidities itself or pass through the metabolic change process. And right now, we are now noticed that some of our adolescent and young adults have early onset of the HIV-associated comorbidities. And some experts believe that this may pass through the epigenetic accelerated of aging that cause the aging in this population, so they get the early onset of the HIV-associated comorbidities quite earlier when compared to their HIV uninfected peers. And here's the list of the HIV-associated comorbidities. It can cause abnormality in any organs in the bodies. For example, neurocognitive and mental health disorder, cardiovascular complication, liver and gastrointestinal disorder, adverse bone health, chronic lung disease, metabolic syndrome, kidney dysfunction, as well as delayed growth and puberty and reproductive health disorder. But because the time limit, so today I will focus my talk on cardiovascular and metabolic syndrome. For the cardiovascular complication in this population, it can cause the abnormality of the cardiac muscle, such as cardiomyopathy, cardiac function abnormalities, as well as the vessel, such as the subclinical vascular disease and endothelial dysfunction. For the cardiomyopathy, during the pre-ART era, some of you may remember that dilated cardiomyopathy is one of the leading causes of death among this population. And in the early ART era, exposure to thymidine NRTI such as D4T or ACT is associated with mitochondrial toxicity that can cause cardiomyopathy as well. In this current ART era, cardiomyopathy still persists in this population, but it seems to be caused by multi-factors from HIV infection, ART toxicity, chronic inflammation, and any other traditional cause of cardiomyopathy. And several evidence show that previous exposure to ART that has associated with the mitochondrial dysfunction can continue to contribute to the myocardial fibrosis and dysfunction when they enter their adulthood. This shows you the chart to study that compare the echocardiography from heart-exposed HIV-infected children to heart-naive HIV-infected children. And you can see that the left ventricular fractional shortening and LV contractility increase in those treated by ART, but the LV mass and end-diastolic septal wall thickness decrease when compared to those not treated by ART. However, when you see the graph in the right-hand side, you can see that the left ventricular fractional shortening and contractility still decline over time, even they receive ART for treatment of their HIV infection. This is another prospective cohort study among children living with HIV in Zimbabwe. This study shows you that the incidence of left and right heart abnormalities is quite high. The prevalence and the incidence, it was about 2.5 and 5.6 per 100 person year. And interestingly, during the 18 months of follow-up, RV dilatation and LV diastolic dysfunction still persist in 92% of study participants and 88% of study participants respectively. Just only 6% of the children have cardiac abnormalities that revert to normal. This is another study that shows you that the prevalence of cardiac function abnormalities is high in this population. About 28% of study participants in this study met the criteria for early cardiac dysfunction. And you can see that the left ventricular ejection fraction positively correlated with the time on ART, but negatively correlated with the increase in the viral load and cidovudine exposure in this study. In terms of the blood vessel, subclinical vascular disease can cause the abnormalities of vascular function and vascular structure. We usually measure the vascular function as a stiffness of the vessel using pulse wave velocity. And for the vascular structure, measure the thickness of the carotid intimal media. And both of these markers are the markers of cardiovascular disease and can predict future cardiovascular events. This study shows you the carotid intimal media thickness among individuals living with HIV, but we will focus only children and adolescents that I highlight. You can see that the intimal media thickness is significantly higher among those living with HIV when compared to their HIV-negative peers. And the increase in the IMT was strengthened if the patients have acquired HIV through perinatally, as well as had unsuppressed viral load. This is another study that compared the carotid intimal media thickness and pulse wave velocity between those living with HIV and HIV-negative peers. The pulse wave velocity not different, but the carotid intimal media thickness is different, higher among those living with HIV when compared to those without HIV. In terms of the endothelial dysfunction, this study used the EndoPAT, which is the non-invasive method to evaluate the peripheral vascular endothelial function. And you can see from the upper table that among youth living with HIV, they have the lower score of the to determine the endothelial dysfunction, the reactive hyperemia index, and higher proportion of endothelial dysfunction. And in the multivariate analysis, perinatally acquired HIV infection was one of the significant factors that associated with endothelial dysfunction in this population. For the atherosclerosis, which is the main outcome of cardiovascular disease, this study used the PDA score, which is the score that predicts the future cardiovascular events in individuals less than 40 years of age. And the PDA score equals or greater than 1 associated with the early atherosclerosis. The score composed of the age, sex, HDL and non-HDL cholesterol, smoking status, blood pressure, and glucose level, as well as BMI. And you can see that about 55 to 59% of the participants in this study have PDA score equals or greater than 1. This means this population appears to be at risk for cardiovascular disease, and specific tools for monitor and prevent the cardiovascular disease in this population is needed. In terms of the metabolic complication that can cause the alteration of adipose tissue and weight gain, as well as dyslipidemia. And some of healthcare professionals very concerned about the weight gain after DTG transition. And this is the result from Odyssey trial that compare the weight gain and BMI change among those transition to DTG-based regimen and those retain on the standard of care, which is the PI or NNRTI-based regimen. The blue line represent those transition to DTG and red line for those stay on the standard of care. And you can see that the weight during the 96 weeks of follow-up, the weight gained quite quickly during the early period of DTG transition, and that seems to be stable over time. A similar pattern was seen in the BMI Chiang as well, gained quickly during the early period of transition and then stable over time. In terms of the lipid profile, this is the result from Odyssey trial as well. You can see that among those transition to DTG, the total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol significantly lower when compared to those on PI or NNRTI-based regimen. But these studies show you that the weight gain is possible for those transition to DTG. They measure the BMI 1 year before transition and then 1 year after DTG transition. And the BMI increased at the rate of 0.3 before the DTG transition up to 1.2 kilogram per meter square per year after DTG transition. And the sex modified this association. This means female gain the BMI change, increase the BMI more than male. For the body composition, this study showed that the trunk fat and also trunk to total body fat ratio increased significantly after DTG Chiang at 12 months. So we have to monitor. And also some experts show that the lipid classes are also associated with cardiovascular disease. This study compared the lipid profile of those living with HIV to age and sex-matched HIV uninfected peers. And you can see that cholesterol ester, lactosylceramide, phosphatidylcholine, and sphingomyelin significantly greater among those living with HIV. And this lipid class or lipid species directly associated with cardiovascular biomarkers such as high-sense CRP, soluble CD163, or T-cell activation. So this means if these participants have this lipidemia with this class of lipid, that may put them at risk for cardiovascular disease in the future. And how to prevent cardiovascular complication in this population. You may have heard about the result of REPRIEVE study in the previous section. This is a multi-center randomized clinical trial that compare the risk, the events of MACE, that means major adverse cardiovascular event in adult age between 40 to 75 years who have low to moderate risk of atherosclerosis cardiovascular disease. And you can see from Kaplan-Meier curve that those receive pitavastatin have lower risk of first MACE or the secondary outcome is first MACE or death when compared to those receive placebo. But there is some concern about the safety of pitavastatin because in this study it seems to be increased the risk of the diabetes mellitus and grade 3 or more for myalgia, muscle weakness, and myopathy. But earlier this year at CROI 2024, the study investigators showed that pitavastatin have no effect on long-term objective physical function in their study after a median follow-up time of 4.7 years. So we have to wait whether or not the pitavastatin will have indication for young adults less than 40 years to prevent the cardiovascular disease as well. So in conclusion, I think this population, adolescent living with HIV on ART with viral suppression still show the evidence of subclinical cardiac and metabolic disease. Better understanding these comorbidities in this population is very important because detect it at the early stage, treat quite easier. And this population deserves the special consideration from multidisciplinary team to screen and manage these comorbidities. And also research are needed to gain the better understanding of underlying mechanism of these comorbidities and to guide us to find out the way to prevent and treat among this population, especially in our resort limited settings. Thank you very much.
Yeah.